There was an amendment proffered by Senator Frank Uggan, but I'm going to go ahead and yield to the speaker, I'm the author of the Bill 57-32 because she has a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Yes, and thank you also for taking that recess. We do have several individuals that are proposing some amendments and they're not ready, so I'm going to ask to make a motion to set it aside, and if we can move on to other bills, 57 never losing its place.
And as soon as you're ready with all the
Yes.
amendments, it won't lose its place. It will come right back to it.
Yes.
On that
Thank
motion,
you.
are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, the next bill on the agenda is, I'm going to go ahead and work with Bill number 76-32 as introduced by Senator Frank Blas Uggan Jr.
Buenas tardes, Madam Speaker. Jesus Masi para esta oportunidad no para discutir este Bill number 76. Madam Speaker, I'd like to move for the placement of Bill number 76 as 32 COR, the version that reads as introduced by, as amended by the Committee on Appropriations, Public Debt, Legal Affairs, Retirement, Public Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation, and Land. In the third reading and with discussion, please, Madam Speaker.
Right, and it's as amended, right?
Yes, as amended.
Okay.
No, it hasn't been amended on the floor yet, but as amended by the committee.
As amended by the committee.
That's correct.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to ask our colleagues, and inclusive of yourself, to please consider supporting the proposed measure Bill number 76 as 32 COR. And let me just provide just a little bit of historical data in terms of this particular issue surfacing over the course of the last couple of months. Madam Speaker, when discussions were, or issues were being discussed in a particular roundtable discussion held about 2-3 months ago, one of the issues that was brought up is the Crime Victims Commission, that in fact it had been inactive or has been inactive since 2007, that particular timeline. And just based on that, it became a serious concern only because in conjunction with that, information was shared that there's approximately $400,000+ that is in that particular compensation fund for victims of crimes and their families, and apparently it has not, the particular commission has yet to receive the appropriate number of individuals appointed by the chief executive. And this goes back to, like I said, about 2007. Well, Madam Speaker, I just found out yesterday by information provided by a representative of the government that really the funding source now, based on what is booked, is in excess of $604,000 in this crime victims / families compensation fund, that's it being administered out of the Office of the Attorney General. Well, what we have here is the act relative to establishing a mechanism that will ensure the immediate implementation of the mandates of the Criminal Injuries Compensation Commission and providing amendments thereon in order to require the timely compensation of crime victims and their families. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the chairman of the committee that conducted the public hearing, because not only did he have expedite the public hearing on this measure, but he also recognized the need to get this commission moving in terms of its activities. Also, a number of the senators that were in attendance during the public hearing, Madam Speaker, had shared concerns about whether, in fact, the Office of the Attorney General should be empowered to carry out the activities and the decision-making process and receiving applications from crime victims as well as their family members, albeit without a commission. And based on those particular comments, the amendment that was proffered by the committee having the public hearing, I believe, is very appropriate. And now that provision would allow for, if in fact there does not exist the appointment of at least a minimum of 3 of the 5 members of the commission, then the Office of the Attorney General can continue to carry out the conduct of this commission and entertain applications and make decisions therein. So, Madam Speaker, Section 1 is exactly what I just shared with you. It would allow for should 3 members not be appointed by the chief executive, that in fact the Office of the Attorney General can carry out those responsibilities. Section 2 now is a provision that would continue to allow the Office or the Department of Law or the Office of the Attorney General to provide administrative support. And this was in the original subsection 1 provision, Madam Speaker, but I thought it would have been more appropriate on the Commission staff to put that particular language there. Section 3 would require semi-annual reports rather than annual reports. In this particular case, it's being changed to require that, in fact, these semi-annual reports be provided to the Chief Executive as well as to the Speaker of the Guam Legislature for one particular purpose, Madam Speaker. If, in fact, the reports were being provided in a timely manner as required by law, then I think the inactivity of the Commission since 2007 would not be the case. Only because we have some very strong advocates in this hallway who will continue to look out for the victims as well as their families in terms of making sure that if there's a process in place that would augment any restitution or compensation to the victims and their families, that this Commission will be able to provide that necessary support. So, Madam Speaker, I ask for your consideration, and I ask for the consideration of the members of this body to support this provision, and I certainly appreciate the amendments that the committee chair had made in terms of reinforcing the issue that the Compensation Commission should be given first and foremost an opportunity to be able to facilitate and operate as required by law. But that should that not be the case, then at least there would be a mechanism in place that would allow for applications to be received and to continue to be entertained. Another item, Madam Speaker, just to bring to the attention of the members of the body, is that applications must be, by virtue of other sections they apply to the Commission, must be received within 18 months of the closure of that particular case. So there are other timelines tied in with the activities of the Commission that would otherwise restrict victims and their families from benefiting from the funds that may be available should a Commission not be in existence, or should this process not provide for a continuum of operations. Also, Madam Speaker, prior to the introduction of this legislation about 2 weeks prior, I had forwarded a letter to the Chief Executive encouraging him to please consider identifying individuals that could otherwise be appointed to this Commission. There's a sideline provision that allows for the Chief Executive to appoint temporary or interim members for the Commission. But I think that that's just by virtue of how this legislation reads right now, that I think that it would provide that additional authority for it to continue its operations or the activities of the Commission and appropriately compensating victims as well as their families. So, Madam Speaker, on that note, I ask our colleagues to consider supporting this, and hopefully within a reasonable time frame, if the Chief Executive is not able to identify additional individuals to serve in this Commission, then at least it can start the process of the Office of the Attorney General facilitating the receipt of applications or documents from victims and their families, so that if there is merit and they qualify, then obviously this will provide the necessary support for those victims and those families. So once again, to the members of this body, there's approximately $600-some thousand, $604,000 plus dollars in this account that could otherwise go directly to the victims and their families to help support them get through some of their trying times and their recovery. So I ask for your consideration and the consideration and support of our colleagues. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
On the motion, Senator Yamashita and then Senator Tamada.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to speak on Bill number 76-32. Madam Speaker, I was at this public hearing, and I thought the dialogue was honest and intriguing, in that we can't seem to get an attorney to serve on this commission, and the AG was the first one to say that that wasn't a very good thing to say. It was an embarrassing thing to acknowledge. But what the mover of this bill talked about some of our concerns still rest with me, in that Is it prudent to allow the AG and his deputy to step in, or his deputy to step in and do what the commission is supposed to be doing by giving them this kind of authority? Is there really a need for a commission if indeed we can have the AG doing this? But I think this also goes to a bigger picture of the incredible challenge we seem to have in finding people across our island to serve on boards, councils, and commissions. And I'm not sure whose purview it would be to really review that whole construct about why we seem to have a challenging time in feeling. I think at one time you said we had over 600 boards, councils, and commissions. And so I know the merit of having a board, council, commission is to ensure that there is stakeholder leadership at the table and making decisions for whatever those particular attention matters are of that group. And I, for one, am always for that. But we seem to have a problem in finding people to serve. And one person told me that they didn't like to or didn't want to disclose all their financial matters. They didn't feel that was something that should be accessible by the island. But I have not studied that whole issue enough. But I am raising that as a concern. But over the overall merits of the intention of what this bill does, though, Madam Speaker, is needed. We have over $600,000 in this fund, and most certainly we know that we have many victims out there who are trying to piece together their lives, or trying to move forward, or trying to move on. And when you speak with the different nonprofits or the different faith groups who are trying really hard to help our victims, they certainly would appreciate this commission being up and running, being able to go in front of this commission to get some relief for the victims and their families. Right now, I know, for example, that Polly Mike does a lot of fundraising with his faith group to simply find a place for some of the victims to spend the night, a safe night at. And so when I visit with him, it's really sad. It's really sad how they're moving forward and trying to help, and yet the government has provided a support system, but we're not accessing it. So while I stand in support of energizing this commission, and if this is what it needs to do to get this Victims Commission moving forward to help the victims, I do have concerns with the notion that it's going to happen without a quorum and the AG can step in, then, which tells me, then do we really need a commission to do this, number one. But again, the bigger picture is, I think it's time for whatever the correct body is to review the commission, boards, and councils, membership thereof, what it is needed, and why we seem to have such a problem in getting our people to step up or step in and help. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome. On the motion, Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I certainly rise in support of the bill and to commend the author who is trying to find a mechanism, as he puts it, to make sure that although there's a vacancy although there's a problem with a quorum resulting from a vacancy, which is a result of lack of appointments to this particular commission, it seems like the Attorney General or his deputy or his deputy's designee, whatever the case may be, is hamstrung in terms of trying to provide some kind of remedy to the situation that they're faced with. But, you know, at the public hearing, our good colleague from Manila brought up a very important point that if the lack of a quorum results from a vacancy, that's one thing. Then the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General, pursuant to this mechanism, shall have the authority to act on behalf of the Commission. But what we don't want to see, Madam Speaker, is if a quorum results from someone who is off island or some member who is sick and can't make the meeting, we just don't want the Attorney General, we don't want rather the duties and responsibilities and the powers of a commission to be vested into the hands of one individual. And so the way this bill's been amended, unfortunately it doesn't reconcile in my own mind the concern that was raised at the public hearing. And so what I'm going to propose to the sponsor of the bill and for us to consider is that we amend on page 2, lines 1 through 8. So this new paragraph, Madam Speaker, will read, in the absence of a quorum resulting from a vacancy, the Attorney General or his deputy are hereby granted the same powers and authority under this chapter to carry out the purposes and requirements of this chapter. And so what I'm hearing the sponsor's motivation, and I certainly commend him and agree with him, is that time is of the essence. We have to find a way to make sure that we can stand up this commission. The governor has yet to appoint these individuals. We want to give that power of that commission into the hands of the Attorney General. I think this is a way to do it. If we're going to stick with the amended language as proposed, to say, Governor, you have to do this within 90 days, that's another 90 days, Madam Speaker, that these victims or these victims' families would have to wait for this form of justice to be bestowed upon them. And that's another several or so weeks after that to have these individuals confirmed. So if my amendment is accepted, and so if the bill is amended, further amended to read, in the absence of a quorum resulting from a vacancy, and the governor were to sign this bill, then the Attorney General can act immediately. The Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General, in my opinion, can act immediately, and the most that they would have to wait, Madam Speaker, is 5 days, because that's the 5 days required under the open government law to publish these meetings. And so, you know, I asked the sponsors consideration in accepting this amendment, and to say that if we just limit this section, so then if the Attorney General would have the authority, because this is the lack of a quorum is resulting from a vacancy, we don't have to, in our statute, we don't have to reference governor has 90 days to appoint people, and that this shall be effective until such time the governor appoints at least 3 members to the commission, because although these members of the commission will be appointed, the commission still won't be able to act until they're confirmed by the legislature. And so I offer this as an amendment to this bill, Madam Speaker, Bill 76-32.
Can you please repeat that amendment again? One
Yeah,
more
so
time?
if I can direct your attention to page 2, lines 1 through 8, then that new section will read, in the absence of a quorum resulting from a vacancy, the Attorney General or his deputy are hereby granted the same powers and authority under this chapter to carry out the purposes and requirements of this chapter, period.
And that will replace
That will
what-
replace the entire paragraph.
So it'll be in the absence of a quorum resulting from a vacancy, then continue in line 4, the Attorney General or his deputy are granted the same powers.
Yeah. And then you would delete the
and-
words
and-
until such time the governor appoints at least 3 members to the commission.
And delete that, okay, and also delete the line to 3.
I think so, it's better.
And then to add the words, in the absence of a quorum resulting from a vacancy. And then continue on line 4. The Attorney General or his deputy are hereby granted the same powers and authority under this chapter to carry out the purposes and requirements of this chapter, period. And then delete the rest of that sentence.
Correct.
Okay. Very good. And we need to get it in writing. So on the amendment, I know Senator Munya Barnes, you've written it down. So you want to speak on the amendment? Okay. Yes.
Cedulus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I really don't have any opposition to the amendment, but I do want to just state for the record, based on what exists today with other boards and commissions and what's happening with the lack of providing appointments to the different boards and commissions, especially as we speak about this commission today, is that there is a lack of support to get the appointees on. And my take is, does this become a, I guess, the loophole to not have the appointment by the governor, uh, um, to make it a point to make sure that the appointments come through to this August body? I think, for me personally, as we do the check and balances, and the reason why boards and directors, boards of commissioners and directors are appointed, is to act as some kind of check and balances to the mission mandate and what needs to go out through the community. And my concern is that if we don't put in place the need for the governor to appoint, then again we just find ourselves in a way that there's a loophole to say that, okay, we haven't had it, and we haven't had it for months, and we haven't had it for years, because you and I know today that this is not the only commission that lacks full appointment, and not by any fault of the administration, Madam Speaker. We have heard time and time again with all the other boards and commission that there's so much red tape that they have to go through, that a lot of times those who get appointed to the boards and commission, they have a hard time staying on because for some reason or another. My concern is, like I said, I do support the amendment, and I understand where my good colleague from Magana Heights is going, but I also want something, and maybe if legal counsel can look into it, to saying that there needs to be some kind of timeline where the governor needs to find that appointment or give the authority to the legislature to appoint. Like, and that's something that we can look at.
Already by law.
So,
There is a law that says that.
so,
If the governor
and then
does
maybe
not appoint,
that's
then the
something that
speaker
could be
can appoint.
reamended to look at this after this amendment is disposed. So, Madam Speaker, if I can have just be able to be given the opportunity at a later time on this bill to at least look at that amendment so I can fit it somewhere in here.
I think it'd be best just to go ahead and take a recess, because the only one else I have that wants to speak on it is on the main motion. So I'll give you that recess.
Thank you.
session. Senator Barnes, I know you said you were going to do an amendment.
Yes. Situs Mahasi, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity for this legislative recess to work with my colleagues on a possible amendment. With that being said, I'd ask if we could yield back to the author of the amendment to see if he's got something that is comparable to the concerns that I just addressed a minute ago. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the amendment.
You're very welcome. So Senator Respicio, on your amendment. Oh, so okay, so on the amendment then, Senator Uggan? Oh, to vote on the amendment. I thought you said you wanted to yield to. Oh, okay, so that's how you want to do it. So everyone, the amendment is on page 2, lines 1 to 8. We're going to delete lines 1 to 4, where it says commission, and add the words before that, in the absence of a quorum resulting from a vacancy, then continue, the Attorney General or his deputy are hereby granted the same powers and authority under this chapter to carry out the purposes and requirements of this chapter, period, deleting the rest of the words until and to commission. So on the amendment, are there any objections? No objections? So ordered. So then now, on the main motion, I have Senator McCready. On the main motion, yes, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise in support of this bill. I, however, have a question I'd like to yield to the author. Now, I guess the process of this commission is when the commission is formed, they take the victim's application for compensation. They then deem that this victim is eligible for such compensation. So my question would be to the author of this bill, and I would like to probably proffer an amendment after I hear his answer, is what then happens after they've been awarded compensation through this commission. And I would like to put a timeline on when they should be paid in full. So I would like to ask that question to the author. If we were then to put a timeline on it, maybe 60 to 120 days, with of course availability of funds, would this improve the bill? And if so, I'd like to proffer that amendment.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, Senator, for the question. My understanding of the question is what happens after the commission renders a decision. What is the timeline in which the individual victim or their families will be compensated? And I think that right now, my understanding is that the process does not provide for specific timelines in terms of direct financial payments to the victims as well as to their family members. So if by any chance a good senator would like to proffer an amendment that would be more definitive in terms of the repayment timeline, then I certainly have no objection. But that's my understanding of where we are with this entire proposal. The commission would entertain the application. Any application that is received is legitimately received if in fact it's filed within 18 months upon the closure or the rendering of the judge of the decision on that particular case. And then keep in mind that in fact, Madam Speaker and good senator, that in this case, the judge may order restitution to the families and to the victims. This would augment whatever, if in fact there's restitution provided directly by the judge. This could be used as an avenue to augment any restitution provided to further support the victims and their families. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator McCready still have the floor, and I hope he's able to answer your question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to call for a quick recess so I could proffer my amendment with the author in the right place to support this bill.
Okay, we'll take a 53-second recess. The legislature is back in session. Senator McCready, you still have the floor, and I understand you have an amendment. On the amendment, Senator Uggan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I stand in support of the proposed amendment by the good senator. Just for the information of the members of the body, Madam Speaker, the precursor to that particular subsection 161.60, award of compensation, reads, the commission may order, comma, only from available balances in the criminal injuries compensation fund, comma, the payment of compensation under this chapter. And then it goes on to read sub-item A, sub-item B, sub-item C. And that's where the good sponsor of the amendment is proposing sub-item F. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that this would be the funding in terms of the remittance of the initial payments would be required under that section. Also, Madam Speaker, if I can also add to the discussion, and thank you to the legal counsel who provided the information, there is a section within the code that allows for apportionment of the payments. And that's why the good sponsor was able to phrase it so that the initial award would be provided within the restricted timeline that he's proposed, 120 days. But there is a section in here that the legal counsel brought to our attention that would allow for the commission, in this case, to make decisions in terms of the apportionment of the payments to the applicant once it's successfully awarded. So there's a little bit of flexibility based on whether in fact there are funds in the account, but right now, as of this day, we know that there's $604,000 available. So I certainly hope that the commission will not only get the necessary appointed members, but also initiate the activities on this based on also the amendment to initiate the payments within 120 days. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Respicio. On the amendment, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the amendment, and I would really support the amendment if we were to change the 120 days to 30 days, only because we don't want to add insult to injury. And we don't want to give the commission or the Attorney General, whatever the case may be, the opportunity to say, well, although the award was made, although the cash was there, which is why the award was made, I have up to 120 days to to approve of the claim, and so I think 30 days is reasonable, and I move that we amend the 120 days down to 30 days. And I did speak with the sponsor about this amendment, and believe he's amenable to it.
On the amendment to reduce it from 120 days to 30 days, hearing no objections, so ordered. Senator Yamashita? Oh, you're going to do the same thing. Okay, thank you. On the motion, does anybody else who like to speak on the main motion? Senator, would you like to close? Yes, the main motion? Okay, no, so, yes, so. Okay, so, all right, so, yeah, because we have, yes? Yes? Okay, so, oh, wait, before we do one, and just, this can remain standing, just to make sure that we have then on the amendment that has been amended, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered. Speaker Pangilinan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill has given us an opportunity to take a look at really the structure of the Criminal Injuries Compensation Commission, the efficacy and the efficiency of the laws that are in place. But one of the things that I think we have to also take a look at is, when was this bill passed, and under what kind of Attorney General that we have. And of course, we know that the bill was passed when we still had an appointed Attorney General. And I think that what we wanted to do at that time was, provide the opportunity for victims who may not be able to get restitution from their perpetrators because of the fact that their perpetrators don't have the capacity to provide restitution. That maybe they may be even ordered by the judge, but they don't have, they don't earn money, or whatever reason, they are not able to make any restitution payment to them. And what then becomes of those victims who are left out in the cold, so to speak, with their injuries or inability to work or whatever that has resulted from the crime that have been perpetrated upon them? What happens to them, and how can we help them? And so the concept of putting in and pooling money from other sources to put into a commission or a fund that can then provide compensation for some of these individuals who are not able to be compensated from the restitution orders for them specifically. And so we then put that together and put it under the Attorney General's office to manage that, I think, and put the commission in place. And so now we're saying, well, we can't get the administration or the executive to pay any attention to these unfortunate victims who not only can't receive restitution now from their perpetrators because they're not able to do so, but can't even receive compensation through the pooling of these other resources meant to compensate victims who don't have restitution because they're just not paying attention, or they can't focus on it, or they can't get people to sit on this commission to dole out the payments that these victims may apply to. And so we're going to put it now in terms of the Attorney General to make these decisions on which victim gets paid. And therein, for me, lies, I think, something that we need to take a look at and we're going to focus on, is that now it's very different because now we have an Attorney General who's elected, and so there's a little bit of a conflict that could occur with regards to how then the Attorney General manages and decides which victim gets compensated. Is it one that has brought the biggest headline, or one that has brought the biggest family? How do you decide? And I think that with an elected Attorney General, they're specifically making those kind of decisions on an individual basis, not on a policy basis. They say, well, the legislature does that all the time. Yeah, but I think the legislature, for the most part, does it on a policy basis. And when we do it on an individual basis, it becomes very obvious. So therein, I think, for me, lies the little bit of difference. And I think if we are going to continue this process, and I certainly support continuing trying to find resources to pay these unfortunate victims who cannot and are not receiving restitution from their perpetrators, who must resort now to this criminal injury compensation fund for any kind of restitution whatsoever, that we kind of restructure that commission to take out any kind of subjectivity that may be linked to elections and politics in terms of payment, and take that out of there so that every victim that comes doesn't get victimized a second time by the political process of elections for attorney generals or whatever. And so I think we have an opportunity, and we probably should take a look at that, and that's something I think we need to focus on. So thank you very much, and Mrs. Masi, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. So on the motions, anybody else who would like to speak? Senator Truggen, would you like to close?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if I can just, first of all, I want to thank our colleagues for the deliberation and for really discussing some of the issues that this legislation brings up, and I think we all share the same sentiments. We just want this commission to initiate their activities so that they can justly compensate the victims as well as their family members. So I thank our colleagues for the nature of the deliberation. The previous speaker, Madam Speaker, the speaker, mentioned about possibly having this whole process evolve over time. And some of the sideline discussions was perhaps we can identify certain positions either in the community or in the government where in fact the composition of the commission members could be codified to the extent where these individuals would directly contribute to the decision-making process. So just in light of that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to just add a couple of amendments if we can go back to the amendment that was proffered by the good Senator Respicio, the majority leader. And in that amendment, based on its reading, I'd like to add, rather than "or his deputy," to insert the word "chief." So it would read "chief deputy." And then, Madam Speaker, at the end of his amendment, which would have read, which reads, "purposes and requirements of this chapter, period," the following words, and yes, Madam Speaker, I will prepare this in black and white, and I apologize. The following words will be inserted right after the word "chapter." This subsection, subsection A, shall be effective for a term of 180 days from date of enactment. For a term not to exceed, I apologize, for a term not to exceed 180 days from the date of enactment. And the intention there, Madam Speaker, is obviously to put our feet to the fire in terms of trying to formulate exactly how we would like this commission to continue to operate beyond the 120 days, whether it's bringing in other community members or allowing for perhaps a modified approach to ensuring that the Crime Victims Compensation Commission is able to operate regularly rather than having to wait for appointments if in fact there continues to be difficulty having individuals serve in this commission. So, Madam Speaker, if I can just highlight again, just before the word deputy, it would insert the word chief, and then after the word chapter, period, this subsection A shall be effective for a term not to exceed 180 days from the date of enactment.
Okay, the first one then, on page 2, line 5, before deputy, add the word chief. Any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And then on line 7, is that now continuing after chapter, this subsection A shall be effective for a term not to exceed 100 days from the date of enactment.
180 days.
180 days. 180 days from date of enactment. Senator Yamashita, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And so in following what the mover of this amendment is saying, I understand that we don't want to keep it going on this. We want to put a period for us so that somebody, whoever is supposed to be doing it, addresses the commission membership and how it might evolve. So then, therefore, Madam Speaker, should we then specify that this chapter shall not be, I didn't write down everything that was stated, but the 180 days during which time the commission will be reviewed and reconstituted or addressed, so that we know that that's what that's for. That's probably not the language that should be there, but the intent of the 180 days. Do we want to specify what needs to happen by the 180 days or at the conclusion of 180 days?
Senator, do you yield to that question?
Madam Speaker, thank you very much to the good senator for bringing that issue, and I think she would provide direct clarity in terms of why this timeline is being incorporated into the law. So I have absolutely no objection. The only question now would be how would that be phrased and inserted into the proposed amendment, Madam Speaker.
Why don't I take a brief recess and consult with legal counsel on whether that can be a technical language to include, or do we need to rewrite the amendment? So we're going to take a brief recess. The legislature is back in session. Senator Yamashita, your question was resolved? Okay, you're very welcome. So, Senator Uggan,
Just one comment, Madam Speaker, just so that in fact it's for the record,
yes.
that the 180 days is inserted there so that in fact the commission, the composition of the commission can be reconstituted to meet the requirements of this particular body and how we want that operation to continue. So it's not carte blanche, 180 days, and then we're back to square one.
Okay.
But within that 180 days, we should have it reconstituted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So on the amendment then, hearing no objections, so ordered. So in the motion to send bill, make sure I get the right bill here, 76-32 to the third reading file, no objections, so ordered. We're going back again to the other bills that we've set aside until the author is ready to make the presentation. So we're going up to bill number 62-32, and I'd like to recognize the author, Senator Rodriguez.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 62 in the third reading and briefly discuss it.
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 62-32, as substituted by the committee, is an act to establish the Guam Council on Child Death Review and Prevention. This bill, Madam Speaker, was advocated by the Guam Early Learning Council. This Early Learning Council's mission is to support each child from birth to 8 years in age in reaching his or her full potential through a health care and education system that is accessible, comprehensive, integrated, and responsive to diverse cultures, and is developed in collaboration with families and communities. Within this council, Madam Speaker, there was created a subcommittee on child death review. It was empaneled to find ways to ensure that gaps in health care of Guam's children are addressed during the earliest stages of life. This legislation statutorily establishes a multidisciplinary and multi-agency group of representatives aimed at finding factors related to childhood deaths on our island. Guam has an alarming infant mortality rate, Madam Speaker. In 2011, there were 44 deaths of infants under 1 year of age, and in 2012, there were 46 deaths of infants in the same age group. In 2011, the infant death rate on Guam was at 13.3%. This is twice as high as a national mortality rate of about 5.9 for the U.S. mainland. This legislation, through the Child Death Review Council, will examine, determine, and understand why so many of these deaths happen. The information gathered, Madam Speaker, will then be used to improve strategies for the prevention of future loss of young lives. I'd like to thank my co-sponsors, Senator Yamashita and Senator Brant McCready, for joining me in this. But of course, I'd like to thank the individuals in the Early Learning Council who really put a lot of work into this and have been waiting for the passage of this legislation. We know that Guam, at that time when we had initial discussions with them, was the first to establish statutorily this Child Death Review and Prevention Council. And so I'm happy to report that during the public hearing, one of our colleagues, Senator Mike Nicholas, brought up an issue that perhaps one of the ways for us here in the legislature to be able to understand and also be part of this process is to have the council give us a report on an annual basis. And so we've included that in this in the substitute version. And so I ask my colleagues to please support me in this effort. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator McCready, You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the author of the bill and the previous speaker, the good Senator Rodriguez, for including me as a co-sponsor in this bill. You know, I think when you've been to the public hearing and you listen and you hear the facts, how we are almost triple the mortality rate of the United States and 46 infant deaths, that's troubling. So I fully support this bill. And at the public hearing, it was very interesting that this is not a bill that is looking to blame anyone for the death. But through this bill and through this type of legislation, we can try and prevent future deaths. Whether it's negligence, criminal, or natural death happening, I think we can learn from this review board. And I'm very happy and proud to take part in this piece of legislation. And I hope that this bill's intent from the Early Learning Council and the language in it, that we gain valuable data in finding out just how we can approach our future in this community. So once again, I thank the author for allowing me to be a part of this bill, and I support him 100%. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Yamashita, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of Bill number 62-32. A most troubling subject, a most sensitive topic, our babies dying. And as stated by the two previous speakers, we have an alarming infant mortality rate on our island. And this is simply a measure to drill down on the data, to find out what's going on, and then from there we can decide how to best move forward to prevent such tragedy from happening across our very small island with such huge crisis issues. Madam Speaker, all of this started with the Early Learning Council, guidance for Terry Farron at Guam Cedars, University of Guam, Centers for Excellent Development of Disabilities, Education, Research, and Service. They brought a national consultant out, and we spent a whole day at the West End talking about this. We had all the agencies represented. We had people from behind the fence and in front of the fence, and everybody was together about how do we best address our babies dying. And so oftentimes people will say, why do you need a law? And sometimes the answer is that a policy will make sure that we do address it, that we are beholden by something that says we have to look at this, that this is an important issue, and that the community, our society, has made a statement that protecting our youngest, giving them a safe upbringing, ensuring that they do have an early childhood and they do go on further for life, is a policy statement made by this body. And so that is perhaps why such a policy should be needed. And then from there, this kind of policy connects us with our counterparts across the nation about how they are addressing such societal issues, what kinds of prevention are they taking, what is happening in preparation for our parents, in parent training, in family supports, how do we help Children Protective Services and public health, how do we help everybody come together to look at a young child and how he and she shall be allowed to live and live well. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to speak on Bill 62-32, and I thank the author of this bill for allowing me to co-sponsor. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion? No one else would like to speak, so Senator Rodriguez, would you like to close? Okay, so on the motion then to send Bill 62-32 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Bill number 65-32, Senator San Nicolas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to make a motion to place 65-32 in the third reading file and be afforded an opportunity to speak on the bill.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bill number 65-32 was introduced in the spirit of Resolution 2-32 as adopted by this body, which set a vision and mission statement for the Guam Legislature. Our vision statement, as adopted, is we believe the people of Guam deserve a government that fulfills its service obligations, operates within its means, grows opportunities for all, improves the quality of life, and protects the interest of future generations. Numerous mission items apply to this bill, particularly mission item number 1, item number 3, item number 4, and item number 6. This bill, Madam Speaker, intends to authorize the directors and the governor to develop education programs for our boards and commissions so that all of our boards and commissions can be educated on the laws, rules, and regulations that apply to the work that they do. And the intent of this bill, Madam Speaker, is to bring up to speed these boards and commissions so that they're making informed decisions that will result in less litigation, informed decisions that will result in less procurement delays, and informed decisions that will result in more uniformity between the decisions that they make and the laws, rules, and regulations that apply to the respective areas of their oversight. So I've introduced this resolution in the spirit, I've introduced this bill in the spirit of Resolution 2-32, and I humbly ask all of my colleagues to support it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I just want to make sure, though, that the bill that you've asked to speak on is as amended by, is that correct?
Correct, as amended by the Committee on General Government and Cultural Affairs.
Okay,
That's
thank
correct.
you very much, Senator. So on the motion? No takers? Speaker Pangilinan?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in support of expanding, of course, educational opportunities, and in this case for those public servants who present themselves to this body as well as to the public in service on these boards and commissions. I think it's a fair thing to do that sometimes these bodies and individuals are not as conversant with the requirements of their function. And we kind of, just throw them to the wolves at times and expect them to do a job that we expect because we understand what the responsibilities are while they may not have been given the opportunity to be educated on that. And so I do once again support the fact that I think it's a good thing. I think it's a fair thing to do, and it's it'll only result in better governance in our boards and commissions and in our departments and agencies that are directed by the policies set by these boards and commissions. The one concern, of course, we had is who conducts the training, and I think that this is another of those bills. Let's put something in place that we don't have now that we know when put in place will improve the situation from the way it is today, and that we'll continue to work and look at it. There was some concern involved that it is the director that will conduct the training, but I think that any training is better than no training whatsoever. And so we'll put this in place, we'll work with it, we'll see how it works, we'll ask for comments from the boards and commissions, whether or not they thought the director of the agency was an effective and efficient trainer, and whether they think that it should be somebody else based upon the experiences that they have. But I think until we do such time and move forward on that, we'll never know the definitive answer on that. We may all have an opinion on which way to go, but when we finally get some background and feedback from those that are involved, we hope then to be able to look at it, re-examine it, and then make any additional changes that we think may be beneficial to greater progress and greater accountability and transparency from the training that these board and commission members receive. So I stand in support of the bill. Thank you, and Sidismasi.
Thank you very much, Senator Ben. Any other senator wish to be heard on the bill? Madam Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I too support the bill, and as I was looking through of course, the GCA, it's unfortunate that at one time, it's amazing how things happen with past legislatures and then future legislatures, and what are some of the things that we've done, and then now, of course, we're back again to reinventing because maybe there is a greater need for it. but there was in 5 GCA, Chapter 43 on boards and commissions, specifically Section 43.116 on the development of boards and commissions training program. So that actually had existed, and it was added in the 24th Guam Legislature, and then in the wisdom of the 28th Guam Legislature that was repealed. In addition, then there's another section for boards and commissions training. The exact same legislation from the 24th Guam Legislature was repealed in the 28th. And so here, of course, we are again having to do this, and there's definitely a need to do this, and it really, and hopefully that in future legislatures that we don't again go back and try to repeal this, especially because every 4 years at least we know that there will be new directors, new boards and commission members, and because those individuals are new, it is important for these members to understand certain laws that are in the book, and especially laws that are applicable to that department or agency that they have oversight of. And well, the new things to add on is executive orders, and that for me is excellent because many times executive orders come and go and we never really know whether even one exists, so that is critical. And maybe there might be some overlap here, because as I was looking at another, the same it's 4 GCA, a different chapter 15 on standard of conduct, and all these same individuals, board members, commission members, directors of departments and agencies, they too, as a new thing that was provided by public law, is now requiring that all of these individuals actually go through another training, but it's very different. This one will be ethics now in government program guidelines. So there's some similarities here, an overlap maybe, and and that should not be a problem, because if you don't get it the first time, then hopefully the second time you will, because there are same thing is included, Guam statutes concerning ethics, other statutes concerning lobbying, Guam procurement laws and regulations, Guam contracting laws and regulations. So all those are covered in the ethics program guidelines. So it just kind of dovetails this specific bill here that would like to be able to now require the training of boards and commissions. So, Mr. Speaker, I do stand in support as well of this piece of legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Any other senator wish to be heard on the bill? Any other senator wish to be heard on the bill? If not, I invite the author to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the wisdom and support of the two retiring speakers. The bill as drafted does allow for the directors to conduct the education program. And we thought at length in the committee about how that would affect the relationship between the boards and the directors. And one of the things that I've come to learn, particularly from my family, my parents who are educators, is that sometimes the best way to learn something is also to teach it. And so this bill, I think, by allowing directors to educate board members, will also make sure that the directors who are in those agencies are also on top of the laws, rules, and regulations that apply to the agencies that they oversee. The directors should, if they want to put together a prudent training program, should work with the compiler of laws, the Attorney General, and the public auditor in order to compile something that is comprehensive and effective in the training of the board members. Also, the concern about the ethics training, I think, is very well founded. And for me, the construct of this bill is designed to address the fact that many of our boards and commissions have an amazing variety of responsibilities. And it's very difficult for us to come up with a one-size-fits-all type of training when it comes to the nuances of the laws, rules, and regulations that apply to them. Ethics, as a broad scope, is something that can definitely be applied across the board. We look to take the wisdom of the legislatures that have gone before us in implementing that law by taking it a step further and making sure that we are addressing those nuances and the gravity that they have with respect to the agencies, the directors, and most importantly, the boards and commissions to which they apply. So, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for your wisdom and for your support, and I again look forward to the support of the body on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very welcome. So on the motion to send Bill 65-32 to the third reading file without any objections, so Mr. Vice Speaker, you would like to speak?
I just wanted to make an announcement, Madam Speaker, and congratulate you. I just received I get a global travel industry news report constantly, like 10 a day. And I just received a note that...
What, you want a trip to Guam Island?
No, unfortunately. It's...
Oh, I'm planning. Shucks, okay.
The most recent one that I just received about 2 minutes ago was TSA delays knives on planes.
Thank you.
In the face of a huge backlash from flight attendants, nearly every other stakeholder in aviation and the public, the Transportation Security Administration today postponed its plan to allow knives on U.S. flights starting Thursday, April 25th. And it goes on, like any agency, before TSA changes rules, it is legally required to issue a notice of rulemaking to allow all interested parties the opportunity to submit comments and to fairly consider the input. If those procedures were followed, we would have no doubt that the administrator will conclude that knives have no place on our planes and will leave the rule barring weapons in place. Just thought I congratulate you on your motion.
We have to
That it worked.
congratulate our local flight attendants for all their work as well. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Vice Speaker. So on the motion to send 65-32 without any objections, so ordered.
So does the clerk still need to transmit?
Speaker Pangilinan, you're recognized on Bill 67-32.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to move that Bill 67-32 COR be placed in the third reading file.
Okay, this is not
And I'd like-
amended, right, or substituted? It's just, okay, as introduced.
Correct.
Right, okay.
And I'd like to speak on the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill number 67-32 is a bill that would identify and correct and allocate property at the Northern Sports Complex with regards to the development of the Soccer Association or the Guam Football Association's facilities for youth recreation within the Northern Complex properties that have been identified. When we first allowed the Guam Football Association to enter into an agreement with the Department of Parks and Recreation for the development of soccer fields for their sports programs dealing with our youth and our adults in our community, the Guam Football Association, Department of Parks and Rec, and Land Management basically drove up to the facility, looked at it, and based upon identification of points within the entire Northern Sports Complex, we're told that and shown that from this property, from here to the end of that corner there, this is the property that you have, and that we will enter into a memorandum of understanding for the development of the soccer facility for your sports programs. And so the Guam Football Association, with its resources that were quite significant, were able to take advantage of a tax credit program that was very unique to any other tax credit program that we've offered here on Guam. And it was a requirement, and it was a tax credit program that I had sponsored, and there was some pushback a little bit because at that time I said, the only way that you can claim a tax credit if you match it dollar for dollar. Every other tax credit has been 100% just government funds for the programs identified to take advantage of those tax credits. It's not on an income base, nothing, But the Guam Football Association, because they had some additional resource with support from the International Football Federation, were able to match and required to match for every tax credit dollar that they had, that they take advantage of to put into the development of the facility. They had to put in $1 of their own money. So we basically doubled the government's money to help develop that facility in order to provide the best sports facility for the sport of soccer here on Guam that we could. And man, Madam Speaker, what a facility it's turned out to be. The Guam Football Association started, of course, with a grass field and gravel parking lot, and with every additional dollar that they were able to take of the initial $500,000, they actually brought in over that amount. So they actually brought in over 500,000. They brought in over $750,000 to develop that sports facility. And so what resulted in that, of course, is you have one of the world's first class artificial turf in this part of the world dedicated to youth soccer and the sport of soccer in Micronesia and even parts of our South Pacific. That facility there will rival any facility sporting artificial turf for the sport of soccer within our region, Madam Speaker. And so what has occurred, Madam Speaker, is that as they continue to develop the property, and with the latest investment that they wanted of developing additional artificial turf facility, plus putting in investments of almost $500,000 or $600,000 in solar lights to upgrade the facility and cut their operating costs, as they kind of mapped out the field for the new soccer pitches that they're going to put in, it was discovered that what they were shown was more property than what was originally authorized in the enabling statute that allowed for that MOU. And so what this bill does is, because they have made all of these investments, over $2 million of investments in those facilities up there, and they are able to secure more, but this time, once they secure more dollars, we're going to move from the north to the south, and we are in the process of finalizing the design and program and the fundings there for the Guam Football Association to build a soccer facility in the south. We've talked to them, and they are very, very open to developing artificial turf facilities in maybe one of our public high schools that become available to the school there for their use, as well as to the soccer association or the football association for other programs that they have in the central part. So they are a very generous organization with regards to providing world-class facilities for the youth and the community of Guam. And so what this bill basically does, Madam Speaker, is it identifies that the property that they have developed and have plans for developing total 79,000 square meters instead of the original 13,000 square meters that were authorized. And so we are recognizing that that was through no fault of their own, that was what they were shown, and they continued to map out the master plan for that facility. And now that they've made $2 million in investments, they need to be able to utilize those additional square meters and ensure the international organizations that support them that they in fact have a right to be there, occupy that space, and develop the property for the sport of soccer and the advancement of recreation opportunities for our young children. And so the bill in Section 2 basically identifies that the property now is 79,000 square meters within the boundaries of Lot 10 or 10142-New Dedido, of which the entire lot consists of 242,000 square meters. In addition, of course, it then places those additional properties under the same MOU agreement that they have for the original 30,000 square meters, Madam Speaker, and that then it allows for a renewal of their lease upon the expiration, Madam Speaker. And again, Madam Speaker, this is, to me, one of the classic and most successful public-private partnership that this government has embarked upon, because every dollar the government invested basically doubled because the partner they had put in $1 of their own money. We haven't seen that kind of partnership and that kind of resources dedicated in the tax credit program. Uh, Usually it's basically we might as well appropriate the money when we give a tax credit because it becomes 100% government money. But in this case, because of the nature of the organization, the fact that they're willing to put themselves on the line and go out and seek support and grants from their international affiliation, they've been able to maximize what they have received in support from this government and this community in the development of the facilities. And it's all for our children, and it's all for our young our adults who participate in the sport of soccer. Madam Speaker, in addition, of course, to the development of the sport and physical activity for our children, opportunities have abound with regards to this affiliation and work with the Guam Football Association, and they deserve credit for that. They have been able to produce, number one, professional class athletes through their programs. We have people who grew up playing soccer with the Guam Football Association now playing in the professional leagues in Manila. We've seen some of them play in the professional leagues within the United States. But even more important than that, of making that jump to the professional leagues, Madam Speaker, is that we've seen these young men and women receive full ride scholarships to colleges within the United States, in which they get paid their tuition, their room, and their board for a full 4 years to give them the educational foundation that they will forever have in their lives, even after soccer. And so this is the type of support that this community has given to our young children. This community and this government has been very generous with regards to the support that we've given the association, but it's all been for greater opportunity and for greater education and development of our young men and women in our community who participate in the sport. And I think that this is something that I think will continue to be a fruitful partnership between the Guam Football Association and the community of Guam and the people of Guam. And once again, I say that they are willing to reach into our schools, reach into the other sections of our community to develop the facilities that we can't and haven't been able to do so on our own for the public school system as we develop and work further on that partnership. We hope to do that very shortly, Madam Speaker. And once again, AGAT is going to be the next beneficiary of this support that we have given to this soccer association. It was part of the condition of the original MOU and the additional granting of tax credits for the northern facility. Part of the condition was they develop a facility in the south, and they said, hey, that's really something we want to do. We embrace that. We're not thinking that you're going to divert us from our resources in the north to the south. They're saying we have been looking for an opportunity and a way to access property in the south, to develop the facility there so that the children in the south for practice don't have to drive all the way up to the north, and we can provide them a good facility, clean, well-maintained, for them to apply their support on. And so this is something I think that is good, and I ask my colleagues for their support on this. Before I close, Madam Speaker, I'd like to also make the motion that Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes be added as the second co-sponsor on this bill.
On that motion, without any objections, so ordered. On the motion, Senator McCready, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise in full support of Bill number 67. I have had the opportunity to be a professional athlete, as the former speaker said about these soccer fields and this facility. I've been able to see AstroTurf fields or regular fields, dirt fields, and I was able, as a sportscaster on Guam, to see that soccer field before it was developed. And we have come a long way in developing the sport of soccer on Guam and its facilities. If you go around the island and you look at the dilapidated facilities, we have one shining star, and that's that Derido soccer field. We had a public hearing here, I think about a month and a half ago, where a gentleman testifying in opposition of a certain bill, said he spent $950,000 on a building that he believed it was an administration building, and that he believed that building would be the legacy that they left behind. And I disagreed with him. You don't leave behind a administration building. Yankee Stadium, that's a legacy. Lambeau Field, that's a legacy. But their admissions building is not a legacy. And I think a soccer field of this nature is a legacy for Guam. And it's going to continue to be a legacy. I was present at that soccer field this past Saturday for the final jamboree of a very successful soccer season. And there were thousands of people there. So not only does soccer provide an avenue, as the former speaker said, for kids to go off island, gain a scholarship, and become better and productive members of society when they graduate from college, they also become teammates, good teammates at that, and they become part of a team, and they learn self-confidence, and they learn how to exercise. I've never played soccer in my life, but my kids play soccer, and they love it. So I commend the author on this bill, and I think this is somewhat of a legacy left behind. And I support this bill 100%, and I hope that this body supports the bill. And when we have other avenues to grow in the sporting community other than soccer, I think we take this same approach and the same enthusiasm so we can inspire our kids to aspire to go off island and be as good as you can be. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and once again I commend the author, and I support him 100%. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Munya Barnes, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in full support of Bill number 67-32COR. And I want to thank the good sponsor for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this sponsorship. I do want to say, Madam Speaker, that the saying of "build it and they will come" truly fits in this support of the legislation, because the good author of this legislation has been very diligent in working closely with the Football Association to see that these facilities are built, and he is right. This is probably the only public-private partnership that has truly come into play, where the community, the government, and of course the association working to build upon our athletes is truly a win-win all the way around. In the beginning, I do know that there were some concerns in reference to the other nonprofit organization, Madam Speaker, that wanted to work and get a space up there for their sporting facility. And I do know that the good director from Parks and Recreation did present testimony in reference to this bill in support of. So I do know that the one of the nonprofit organizations that have come to mind is the Guam Tennis Federation, who also has a very strong portfolio, a nonprofit organization that continues to grow upon the program and to work with the children and adults within the community to bring, to support the efforts of sports tourism. As the good author of the legislation spoke about, where were we back then as compared today, Guam has a lot to be proud of. When we heard the news that Team Matao had beat one of the top-ranked teams of football around the world, within the world, we were shocked. Who would think that a small island with 150,000 or 159,000 would really come and work their way up to the ranks and beat one of the toughest competitive teams in the world? And I just want to say it just goes to show that when you have a good organization working closely with our government, working closely with the nonprofit organization to make the program work and to engage in the community and to ensure that the community has full range of support into this football association that we all know as the soccer. I want to say, Madam Speaker, is a win-win. I do want to share some facts about how this field is being utilized today, Madam Speaker, and I want to say that as of today, 5,000 average number of spectators and players partake on any given Saturday during youth leagues. They have 2,500 average number of youth players in the Guam Football Association program alone. And Madam Speaker, this doesn't include the schools, the middle schools, the high schools, and even the private schools. When you talk about the total minutes that is utilized for the youth that play on any given Saturday, you total over 2,232 minutes. They got this down to a science. And I just want to say, with a lot of the facts that are here today, Guam was even greeted or had a great visitor that came from FIFA, which is the International Football Association, which was President Blatter, who visited us a year and a half ago. He came to Guam and he was very excited about the program that we had here, but more importantly about the participation of the community. We founded, the Guam Football Association was founded in 1975, and since then it has grown tremendously. And I just want to thank all the teams. There were so much more facts that were provided, Madam Speaker. Today they have more than 20 teams in the adult men's league. They have over 14 clubs and organizations that participate in this program. They have 9 women teams in the women's league here. We have the 8 international tournaments that have been hosted here on Guam since 2007. And as we look, Madam Speaker, of advocating for sports tourism and bringing a market to visit our beautiful island as Oversight Chair of Tourism, I want to say that is truly a great plus for our island. And it is efforts like this where we see that when legislation like this is introduced and the whole community wins as a whole, this is just a great thing for Guam. And I'm just very happy and excited to be a part of that. And I really want to thank the author of the legislation, the good speaker from Barrigada, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the sponsorship and truly believing in that, build it and they will come. When travelers come to play here, athletes come to play here, especially in international play, and having the opportunity to play in road competition, that just brings the level of our island up a step higher into professional international sporting events. And we hope that a lot of the other sports organizations here on Guam will step up to the plate and truly see the success of what the Football Association has here on Guam. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise and speak in support of this. Sainamasi.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Uggan. I agree. Okay, so we'll just let them know then. We're going to take a brief recess. Thank you, Senators, for that brief recess. But on the list to speak on Bill 67, Senator Uggan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for purposes of brevity, just so that I can highlight that, yes, I did have a few items on my note that I wanted to expound on in terms of my support for the legislation, but with all due respect to you, Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of this legislation.
Thank you very much for that. That's the shortest testimony I've ever gotten. Thank you. It's okay. Oh, that's okay. We are congratulating him. Senator Respicio, oh wait, on the motion to send 6732 to the third reading file, no objections, so ordered. So Senator Respicio, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that we recess until Thursday at 2 p.m. Until such time, we should have additional committee reports filed for those items on the second reading file, as well as some other matters that we're presently trying to resolve. One of them includes your bill, which you've announced that a member is working on an amendment, so that should give us ample time. So I move that we recess until Thursday at 2 p.m.
We are recessed until Thursday at 2 p.m.